So, first person with the correct answer gets an extra credit point tonight. Shout it out loud and proud as soon as you get it. Unfortunately, Erica, did you get your microphone figured out? You don't have to answer that right now, but maybe you didn't hear me loud and proud. Whether you're wrong or right.
$35.10.
$35.10. Anybody else? Leanne, you sound like you had an answer, but you weren't too proud.
1944.
1944. Okay, that's fine. Anybody else? All right. So let's see. $34.99, we'll call that good enough, Brandon. Might be some rounding error somewhere involved in there. So, $34.99 is the optimal price, or $34.10 if you've got Brandon's calculation. So again, all we did is take price minus $18.99 or 19. P minus 19 divided by 19 equals 1 over 0.28. Solve it out, and we get $34.99. Barnes & Noble, Costco, Walmart, all priced it at 20 bucks. So either they are not profit maximizers, or economists are full of BS. Which one is it, right? Because this is the formula, isn't it? Don't we know this, and all MBA students know that you follow this formula and you will maximize profits? Remember, this formula is derived from the holy grail of economics, marginal revenue equals marginal cost. $34.99. What's going on here?
Where did we get the 1 at?
The 1. This one?
No, over on the left.
Over here?
Yeah.
I think we just flipped that around from this one over here. But I'm not positive. I mean, here's how I would have solved it. Price minus, let's just call it $19 over price equals, what was 1 over 2.18? 7.45, 72?
Yeah.
So then P over P is 1.
Okay.
That's the
So
1.
that's
1 over 19 over P equals 4.572. And then we can start solving.
So you asked why did they not price it at that?
Yeah. So what really they did, all of these big boys here and girls priced it at 20 bucks or less.
Is that the first book?
No, this is the sequel. Is that what you mean? The first book?
Yeah, I didn't know if they needed to sell the first one so they could.
Oh.
They're open to it.
Does it have to do with like them ganging up on small bookstores? Get people in the door?
Maybe to some degree, so kind of build on that. So I don't know if it was necessarily targeted at small bookstores, I guess is my problem with what you said, but I think you're on something.
They want to, those are all big stores that sell a bunch of different kinds of stuff.
Uh-huh. And so what do they want people to do?
Into the store to buy other stuff.
They want to get them in, so yeah, this is kind of that lost leader type of concept where we price something low in hopes that people will come in the door and buy our other stuff, right? So our marginal revenue to marginal cost formula here is really coming to us from that single product firm. And so now we're getting into the real world in these next 3 chapters. So chapter 6 was this whole business of this price. Oops. And we're going to get a little more sophisticated now. So now if we sell multiple products, I think you pretty much nailed it. If I price it at 20, and then while they're shopping for the Harry Potter, they buy a couple other books, then I might make up for that. Right? I might make up for that. At least I'm covering my marginal cost and maybe making $1 or 50 cents on it. So they're not selling it at a loss, but they're allowing that book to be the one that brings people in the door. All right, so this is how it shook out. About 1%, it estimates anyway. This is not something that's easy to figure out, but it estimates that 1% of its $2.8 billion came from that pricing scheme by Harry Potter people coming in the door buying it for 20. That's a lot of money. Yeah, that's a lot of money. I don't know exactly how they estimated that, but even if it's close, even if it's something half that, it's still pretty darn significant on getting people into the door or in the door that way. Now, I don't know if you've heard about Amazon being in the news here the last couple of weeks, but they're not very good at making money yet. You guys heard any of that? So their business model has been to, are you guys Amazon shoppers? I mean, almost everybody is, I think, to some degree. I don't buy a ton of stuff through them, but you almost never would buy something. Why do you buy there? Cheapest.
Lunch breaks.
Any other reasons? Lunch breaks, easy
You're
to
almost
serve.
guaranteed, your product is going to be what it is.
It's going to be what it is. Okay, so they've built up a good reputation that way.
This kind of products, I think you.
Yeah, just everything seems to be on there, right? All of those stuff. So they've been trying to build a business model on volume. So if the Harry Potter cost them $18.99, they price it at $19.20 and make 20 cents on it or whatever, instead of pricing it higher. So they're hoping that lots of people come through, and if a zillion people come through and they make 20 cents, they make 20 cents times a zillion, and it's still a lot of money, right? So that's their idea. But it hasn't worked out really that way at this point. And so investors have been waiting, like, okay, I get your business model. Facebook did this too, right? How much did Facebook cost you guys in terms of viewing ads for the first 10 years? How much pain did it cause you to look at advertising on Facebook? None, right? They were giving it away. That was their business model. So Zuckerberg just gave it to people. Hey, we're going to build. We got 1 million people. We got 2 million people. We got 5 million people. We got 1 billion people. And then, boom, let's sell it and let's snow them with advertising, right? That was his business model. Turned out to kind of work. I mean, their rollout flopped for a while as far as the stock price. It's kind of stabilized, and they're kind of really in business, and they got a lot of viewers. Although I've learned recently that my 15-year-old has gone back to writing notes in class, which you guys are almost too young to remember that. But when I was his age, you know, if you wanted to send somebody a note, you actually wrote a note by handwriting. It's kind of gravitated back to that now because they know that parents are sniping in on their Facebook and other social media. So now they've gone back. So it's kind of interesting how things have regressed back to the old school methods. So with Amazon, they thought, okay, we're going to take our losses, we're going to take our losses, we're going to build our business, we're going to build our business, we're going to build our business, we're going to build our business. And then at some point, we're going to have some money. Well, I think Bezos, I'm not sure he's all there with that. I don't know how big he thinks it's going to get, but he's still adding cost, exploring new markets, making it bigger and bigger and bigger. And so they actually lost money, even though their revenues climbed by, I don't remember exactly what the number is, well, let's say 20%. So from an and we're in the billions now when we're talking Amazon, right? So they climbed in revenues. They had a great quarter in terms of sales. It's like up 20%. Profits were down 15%. Because they have razor thin margins. That's how they're able to offer everything so cheap. And so their costs go up. They start exploring more markets, research and development and other things, and that just erodes away their profits. So finally, the stockholders are starting to kind of see that when is this business model going to make money? You know, and so their stock price took a plunge when they didn't perform here this last time. So, all right, comments on that? All right, so that kind of introduces our multi-product line. Like Costco, there's a zillion things on the shelves, and we can get people in the door. You know, what do we do? So, little video store example. Suppose we got a video store with a nearby rival. Would you change the price of video rentals at each store? So let's just imagine Ottawa, since we're in Ottawa, even though video stores are almost obsolete now, but two stores merged together, right, to be one. Would you change the price of video rentals at each store? What would you do?
They're the only video stores in town.
They're the only, yeah, there's only two in town. So what would you do now once they're merged? You could raise it, right? So you start to act like a monopoly. Good.
But at
So,
the same time, you have to worry about like Redbox.
right, other competitors could be coming around. That's right. And so you got to be a little bit careful, but holding all of the things constant like that, which is a great comment. I don't mean to discount it, but holding all of the things constant, if you've got that monopoly power, you tend to raise prices. All right, so which one would you raise more? Are there some other things that you would do? So
You could probably, or you do.
yeah. What were you gonna say?
I'd probably spike that piece.
Okay, good. So you can start to mix and match the two, right? Yeah. So new releases and old releases, there's some substitutability to that, right? And so we might take one or the other. So which one would we raise more? Would we raise new releases more? So if we had, let's say our old pricing scheme was $2 for new releases, $1 for rentals. Now we merge the two together. Do we raise new releases proportionately more or the old
I
releases?
think I would do the opposite.
Raise the old releases. Okay?
The new releases
No.
will probably bring you in the door.
Yeah, I would say you raise the new releases.
Raise the new releases. Why?
Because A, if you've seen an old one, you're just usually gonna watch it just to rewatch it.
Okay.
And you're more, I mean, for me as a, you know, if I was to go buy a video, I wanna go watch something new, not something.
Okay, good. So the suggestion here is to raise the price on the more elastic good. The more elastic good. Which one are people price sensitive on? So let's think about this for a second. More elastic means flatter or steeper? Flatter. So there's more elastic, there's less elastic, right? And what we've done now is we've really combined stores, which used to be substitutes. Remember, the old story was if you raised your price, people would run to the other video store. And so you'd lose those customers. But now we own both video stores, right? And so if we raise the price on the more elastic product, this one, if I raise the price more on this one, I lose a whole bunch of customers. But where do they go? To my other store. I own this one now too. And so those customers run away, but they run away to this other good. And so we can now start to think about another concept, and that is the margins. Which product do I have the higher margin on? What was contribution margin again? I'll put you on the spot since you think that have that one there.
Price minus marginal cost.
Okay. So my contribution margin to the bottom line is price minus marginal cost. What is the the marginal cost of a video that I've had in inventory? So if we're thinking on a month-by-month basis or quarter-by-quarter basis, so we have an old movie that we bought. Again, we're kind of old school here. I know this. I'm going to have to throw this one in the garbage can eventually because I think we're going to relate to, well, what do you mean? We just stream it. We just press it and there's no inventory. But let's pretend we're a video store. So which one has the higher marginal cost? The new release or the old release? The new, right? So the old release is almost zero, probably. It's just sitting on our shelves. We bundled it. It's in our inventory. It's literally sitting on a shelf, ready to be rented, right? So that has a higher margin potentially. Even if we have $1 for the prices of old releases, if my marginal cost is effectively zero compared to a new release that I'm selling for $2, but it's going to cost me $1.50 to buy that new release when it comes out. So I'm making 50 cents for each new release I sell versus $1 on the old ones, right? I want to try to push people into my higher margin videos. So we can start to think about steering people. Once we start having control, we can start steering people into the higher margin products. So raise the price on the more elastic product, try to push customers into the higher margin product. If that's possible, it kind of depends on the circumstances.
What do you mean by it? So how are you going to push them to the old one? The old one. This has got a higher margin. What do you do to push them towards it?
Raise the price on the one with the lower margin.
Okay.
So then we're going to lose customers on the low margin product, but they're going to tend to buy the high margin product. Now it's not what we have to be careful of is that it's not always one for one. So what are the other alternatives? If on the video rental, you kind of alluded to it already, Leanne, what are other people's entertainment options that are potential substitute for renting the movie tonight from my video store? Hulu, Redbox. Let's get real old-fashioned.
Board games.
Board games, we could go to board games. I mean, we could make it broader if we start talking family entertainment. We could start to go to that. If we wanted to stick in the movie category, though, we could go run down to Auto Main Street and actually go to the show, right? So now we've got a movie ticket price. We can't go too high. So as we start to raise the price on our new releases, my point is that you got to remember, it's not a one-to-one. Oh, they're for sure going to buy my old release. We might start to lose those people to these other entertainment possibilities too. So it's not a real easy answer, but that's the general idea, is to try to get people into that. Redbox has done this pretty well. How many of you get the emails on discounts for Redbox? So what are some of the ones that they give you?
50% off.
50% off, like completely on a one-time purchase?
Yeah.
Okay.
Usually
What
it's
else?
like a video.
Okay.
They give free ones out.
They give free ones. Yep, I've done that too.
Buy two, get one free.
Buy two, get one free. So we're going to start to get into those topics. And then at the point of purchase, have you seen this? Where you rent one video, what do they offer you? Add a second one for how much? It's 50 cents. I just had it happen the other night, right? So they are right at the point of sale, kind of getting a price discrimination scheme going on, getting you to purchase a little bit more. Again, what's the marginal cost to Redbox when you're at the machine and you're about to leave? What's their marginal cost of keeping that video in the machine? And by the way, do you think that whether they offer that extra one for 50 cents is time dependent? Like whether you're buying it at 9 p.m. or if you bought the movie at 4 p.m.? Do you think that's possibly time dependent of whether they offer you the 50 cents? You better believe it. I don't know that for sure, but I would almost guarantee it, right? Because they're looking at it, again, this is all computerized, but they're like, how many more customers am I going to get? It's already 10 p.m. at night or 9 p.m. at night. That's right, 24-hour rental, so they'll get it back tomorrow, or they'll pay the late fee, and then they'll pay the full freight. That's a whole different ballgame, right, of playing that game, of how many people are going to turn it in late. So that's another element to it. Yep. All of this stuff, this is all programmed for you. This doesn't happen by accident. These people are professionals. They've got economists, they've got good business people, good MBAs working on how they should structure the pricing. So this is kind of a fun chapter to, fun chapters that will look at price discrimination.
Sorry, if you go back, the more elastic good would be the new release, right?
Well, in the example I was giving, yes.
Because the one with the higher marginal.
The idea, if you have a one-for-one substitution, if the substitution is strong, like they're going to stay with you,
Yeah.
then go with the less elastic good, because that'll push people in. The sales that you lose here from 20 to 10, those 10 videos that you lose are now 10 videos that are going to be purchased with your other. So you're going to push people into that. So you're getting if you did it vice versa, if you raise this price, you go from 30 to, I'm just making up numbers, but you lose 5 customers, and now you push them into buying new releases, and you only gain 5 more rather than gaining 10 more into your higher margin. You know what I mean? So that's why we're using the more elastic good to drive those sales into the substitute good, which we happen to own now. Instead of losing those customers, we're actually gaining them. All right, so some other strategies. Reposition the products. So if you have substitute goods, when you had 2 independent stores working with each other, they might have had offerings of everything, right? They tried to cater to everybody or whatever. But now that you've got 2 goods, maybe you put all the new releases, I don't think you'd want to do this, but put all the new releases at one store and a larger inventory of, there'd be some old but not so old at the other store. And they're really cheap at the other store, so that, if they're too high here, if I'm looking for a substitute, it's kind of a pain in the butt to drive across town, I'm not going to actually do that, so I'll just stay with the store. And so by positioning, you can kind of segment your markets more.
My favorite video store was, if you go in there for a new release, they would let you rent their old releases for 5 days. So you go in to get a movie, and next thing you're like, well, I have all week. So you pick out, I spent another $5 or $10.
Right.
Like,
You just shell it out. Yeah, I'll get all the time. Yeah. So again, depending on your market, depending on the circumstances. Some of you have come from other towns, or maybe all of you have come from other towns, but how many of you had the cheap theater and the expensive theater? It's kind of similar, right? Where you got the cheap theater that was actually, in my case, owned by the same theater, right? It was both Cinemark theaters. And so they had all the new releases at the fancy theater, and then you had the old rundown one that they had for a while, that it was $1.50 movies, and on Wednesdays it was only $1. And so if you were patient, like I was, and cheap, you only go to the old theater, because I don't need to see it the day it's released. I can wait 3 months. And if you're patient, then they all eventually come to the old theater, and you just kind of get into that groove, and that's the theater you go to. Okay. Now, this brings up a total side story that I probably shouldn't get into, so I won't spend too much time. But my wife and I always went to the cheap theater when we were in college, when we were undergrads. And we went there, I guess, fairly regularly. And eventually, when you go to the cheap theater, what did you find about popcorn? Was that cheap too? No, right? So that's the catch. Popcorn in a movie are what? Compliments or substitutes? Compliments. So you go in there, and so we'd almost feel bad, like it's 50, then back 20 years ago, it was 50 cents on Wednesday nights for the cheap theater. And so, you almost feel bad going to a movie for 50 cents. So we would usually buy a popcorn and a show or whatever. Well, this guy saw that we were regulars, and he would just wave us in, like, you don't even have to pay. It's like, what do you mean? I already feel bad. My willingness to pay is actually $1.50, and you're only charging 50 cents. It might even be higher for that matter. And he's like, oh yeah, you guys come on in. And so we would go in, and then of course we felt extra guilty, and we had to buy an extra large popcorn instead of just the regular size.
Our movie theater like that had like a whole restaurant. Well, not really a restaurant, but like they sold everything. Like you could order ribs at this movie theater.
Oh, is that right?
They really got you on that.
Our cheap theater was the regular theater I grew up in.
Is that right?
They don't-
All right. So now we're going to talk about compliments, things that go together, like the popcorn in the movie theater. So, sticking with the video store theme, we got a parking lot next door. Common ownership means pricing decisions must be considered the effects of movie rentals as well as parking lot use. So, reducing the price at one increases the demand at the other, i.e. common ownership increases marginal revenue at both. So, we got a parking lot, we've got a movie theater. And first of all, let me say, when we're in the Midwest, what do you guys expect to pay for parking? Zero. Right? So you tend to alienate people really fast. I learned a tough lesson with this in this restaurant that I took part in. We were in Campustown area, so it's fairly congested, and we had limited parking. And early on, we tried a little bit of a parking deal of some sort, and it just didn't work. And we continually fought people's perceptions that there wasn't enough parking, even though we ended up leasing parking lot across the street. So people kind of come to expect in the Midwest. You go out to New York or something, everybody expects to drop $15 in parking, like nothing, just going out to eat for an hour or whatever. You're gonna spend money on it. All right, so let's just take for granted here that we've got some sort of paid parking. So reducing the price at one increases the demand at the other. Why? So if we get back to a supply and demand framework with complements, reducing the price at one increases the demand at the other.
Because if you decrease the price of the movie theater, you're gonna have more customers coming, so therefore your parking lot is gonna be fuller.
Okay, so you went the parking lot route, great. And then the flip side of looking at it is to, if you reduce the parking, you might bring more people to the movie theater, right? Is another way. So it works together both ways. So if we talk peanut butter and jelly, if I decrease the price of jelly, I sell more peanut butter. If I decrease the price of peanut butter, I sell more jelly. So one or the other or both, they work together. So which one do we want to, what do we want to do if the video store owns both? What do we want to do? Do we decrease both? Do we increase them both? So with substitutes, we increased both. With complements, what do we want to do?
I say you increase one and decrease the other.
Increase one and decrease the other, okay?
Maybe based off of, if you did that, you could announce earlier, like you split them up, how you split them.
Okay, so let me put two anchors up here. I'm not going to tell you which is which. Does it make a difference if this is the theater or this is the parking lot or vice versa? I mean, what would you want to do with pricing if you have complements? What would be the thing to do? So we consume them together. Do we want to change one at a bigger amount than the other? Again, the idea would be to decrease the price, essentially for the package.
You want to decrease the second one.
This one? Okay. So if we decrease this one, we get a little bit of an effect on quantity, right? We decrease price, it's fairly inelastic, so it's fairly unresponsive. So is that what we want to have happen?
Do you want to decrease the price when you have a big effect?
Where we want a big effect, right? To start thinking about the effects of the bodies coming into my business, I'd be better off decreasing the more elastic good and have a whole bunch more people coming, right? And so then they're buying more of this good as well. So that's kind of these little subtleties in with these goods. So I actually had to call the author on this one. In your book, it says to lower both. And so I sent an email to Luke Frobe, the author of your textbook, and I said, wouldn't it make sense to, since you're going to use these both together, to decrease the one that was more elastic so that it had this effect, just like what you guys were thinking? And he said, yeah, that sounds pretty reasonable to me. And with the email that I got back. So he agreed that this was kind of a little whoopsie in the textbook.
I had a lot of whoopsies.
Yeah, there's a few whoopsies that go on with it. He had some other authors in there too, so it's more than just one. But yes, so this one is this topic can get confusing. I'm not even claiming to be an expert, but I was just kind of using my principles of economics, thinking if we use these two goods together and we want that big effect, just like what you said, we'd be better off just decreasing the one that's more elastic to get more of that effect. Okay.
So that's an example of
Yeah.
parking lot in the movie theater.
We go
Decrease the parking lot.
If it was more elastic, yes. So if this is the parking, and people are like, well, I'm not paying that much for parking. We can't go to that movie if parking's going to run us $3. My gosh. So if we drop parking from $3 to $1, and all of a sudden parking's not an issue, I'll pay $1. Now all of a sudden people are coming to our movie theater, and so we might not have had to drop the price at all there to get them in the door. So yes. Okay, anything else? All right, so what do cruise ships, hotels, and stadiums have in common? Large numbers, okay, good.
That'll get you in and charging ridiculous amounts.
Okay. Once you're in the door, they seem to have high prices, right? So
Particularly
stadiums, I don't know about commercial parking lots, but stadiums and hotels, but they can be complements. Okay, good. Yep, that's true too. Anything else? What about, let me pick on stadiums. They all kind of have this effect though. If I drop my price, will I always get more people in the seats? Why?
Team sucks, I don't want to watch them play.
Okay, that's a possibility, but let's hold that constant. Let's say the team is
Average.
Outside.
Yeah,
Weather.
weather.
Driving distance.
I got some other factors. Let's talk about the Chiefs, I guess.
Oh,
Or the Royals if you want. So if I drop this, if I keep dropping the price, will I always get more and more people in the seats at the stadium?
Because at some point people are going to go to a baseball game.
What does Arrowhead Stadium hold?
It will,
Okay, so we're gonna hit a maximum. That's the concept that we want to think about here, is that there's a limit. In the short run, there's a limit. Arrowhead's only so big. A hotel only has so many rooms. Parking lot only has so many spaces, right? So we hit this limit. So all of the things you guys said are true, but I want to focus in on this limit issue. And how do we make an optimal choice given the fact that we've got a limit to capacity? All right, so in the long run, what did we learn is true about variable costs? All costs are variable. So just kind of burn that into your memory. All costs are variable in the long run, meaning we can change anything we want. We can change the size of the stadium. In the long run, we can bulldoze Arrowhead Stadium and build it a bigger stadium, right? In the long run, nothing is fixed, and therefore all costs are variable. So the first step in this process is to think about what our capacity should be. So now we're an architect and a structural engineer thinking, how many rooms is the right number of rooms for this hotel? You know, what's the right amount of seats for the stadium? What's the right number of parking spaces? You know, what is that magic number? And so we're going to keep adding capacity until the long-run marginal revenue equals the long-run marginal cost. Step number 2 then is once we get into business, we of course want to ignore the sunk cost and the fixed cost essentially by just focusing in on variable costs. And now we've got short run marginal revenue equals marginal cost, right back to where we were. If marginal revenue is greater than marginal cost, do it, keep adding capacity, dropping the price, whatever the case is. We want to bring that place to capacity. All right, so we got kind of a two-step deal here that can sometimes put us in a pinch. We're going to go through an example. So developing a new hotel. Suppose that some economist has estimated that the elasticity of demand is 1.66. And the optimal size is estimated to be 300 rooms. So before that, we figured out, okay, 300 rooms. We're going to do that, and that room's going to be $400 a day. And that was the pre-build marginal revenue equals marginal cost. Now, cleaning help is only $40 a day, right? If you think about the hotel business, what does it really cost the hotel to put another body in the room? It's really that cleaning person that comes in, and then they leave it, and it's done. And there's maybe a little bit of shampoo used and a little bit of conditioner, right? So whatever products were used in the room that they weren't charging outrageous prices for the little bag of M&Ms that were $5.50 out of a little container, which they got that all covered anyway. So really, their cost was just a couple squirts of shampoo bottle, maybe a change of the toilet paper, refreshing of the Kleenex box, and then the cleaning that goes on. $40 a day, right? All right. If we screwed up, what should the rooms be priced at if actual occupancy ended up being 250 rooms at $400? Sometimes entrepreneurs and economists are wrong. In the development phase, we thought this was going to happen. This is reality. So, before you dig into the problem too much, what should this hotel do? The rooms are currently priced at $400 a day. They're selling 250 rooms. What do they need to do? Lower the price, right? Because we want to get up to capacity. But now, since we're dealing with a business that has a capacity, we can do a little bit of math and the elasticities to figure out what that optimal price change should be. So that's what this part of the formula is. Our elasticity formula, if we put the little e over here and this over here, switch places, do a little algebra, the elasticity of demand is equal to the percent change in quantity divided by the percent change in price. We know the percent change in quantity, or we can calculate it rather. How many units do we want to see it change by? 50. Good. So we're at 250. Capacity is 300. So we want to see a change of 300 or a change of 50 to get up to the 300. Divide that by the elasticity in your business. But before you get too deep into it, we got that little special thing that economists pretty much only do with percentage changes. Anybody remember what it was? We usually take the new number minus the old number divided by the old number is kind of the algebra way that you've always learned it. We have a sale at the store and we're marking up prices 20% from $100 to go to 120, but we take the new number minus the old number divided by the old number. Economists don't do that with this formula. We do something special. What did we do? The problem was if we take the new number minus the old number divided by the old number, if I'm going up, the old number might be 100. If I'm going down, the old number might be 120. So what did we do between the 100 and the 120? It's this bottom number that's causing the problem. I'm looking at a quantity change from a 100 to 120. New number minus the old number divided by the old would be 100 in one case, but 120 in the other. And we kept it nice and simple by doing the average. That's right. Good. So all we did was we say, you know what, let's make this average between the two. And then it works both directions. So now you've got enough ammunition here. 250, 300, the average of the two is 275. I'm not going to say anymore. Do it. Pen on your paper. Calculator. Yeah, the new number divided by the old number. You plug that stuff in and you're on your way. Divide by 1.66.
Like it's 11%.
11%, good. What did you get exactly? 11 point something?
10.95.
10.95. Okay, so about 11%. All right, so 10.95. Let's call it 11%. Everybody get that? Now, is that an 11% increase or decrease? Decrease. Good. Remember, we wanted to go down with the price to get that to change. Good. So if we take 11% of the 400, we're going to reduce the price down to about $356. So we're going to actually cut the price down. So using the elasticities and the fact that we have this capacity problem, we're able to calculate how much of a price decrease we should do to get us up to capacity. I guess before I go on to that, this one. Would they have built 300 rooms to begin with if they knew this was the case?
I think so. You could.
Why?
You don't know why people weren't saying that. It could have been unusual
Okay, good.
or something.
So if it was unusual, it would be short-term in nature. Alright, so is that what you're saying? So that's a possibility. That's good. So that it could have been something short-term.
That your marginal cost is only still $40. So.
Okay, good thing to bring up. So marginal cost is still $40. So we're making money. Our contribution margin, doing the whole price 356 minus 40 equals 316. So are we making money? We're making contribution margin. Are we making money? I'll just tell you it's a loaded question.
Shouldn't the answer be you're breaking even, the having the 300 rooms is fine?
Breaking even in what sense? We got, you with me? We got $316 left over from the contribution margin, right? So 356 minus 40 equals 316. And so if we're breaking even, you're saying that's fine in what context? What do we need that 316 to cover? Might be different. What does that 316 need to cover?
Fixed costs.
The fixed costs, right? So it's the fixed costs that might not change. Now, in the case of a restaurant, or not a restaurant, in a hotel, we might have taken out a loan for $4 million. We didn't get into it in this problem, right? But there's some sort of monthly payment going on. And if I break that monthly payment down into numbers, if that number is $316 a month, then that's covering that initial debt load that we took on. But it wouldn't be covering the other $1 million we put in terms of cold hard cash, in terms of our opportunity costs. Then we get into that whole argument we had a few chapters ago of our implicit costs versus our explicit costs. So the 316 might cash flow us, but still might not be optimal in terms of how much we decided to build. So if this turns out to be the long run situation, so your point is well taken that maybe this is just a little blip on the radar and we're down, but in the long run we'll come up. But if we consistently stay at 250 rooms at that price, we screwed up. We built too big of a hotel. We should have built a 250 room hotel or something smaller potentially if the pricing and quantities were different, but we overbuilt the hotel. And because we're not covering, we're either A, not covering our cash flow amount to service our debt, or we're for sure not covering all of our explicit and implicit costs. We're not covering our opportunity costs. Because that equation helped us get that covered. If we did it right to begin with, the whole analysis, which we're assuming we did because we said our expected marginal revenue, and that's why I underlined expected here. When we get into the design phase, I've been in this phase many times and I've screwed up. Well, honestly, I've probably screwed up about every time. That's not true, maybe not every time. There's probably sometimes, a few times where we would have wanted to build more units. But if you screw up on that side, you're a lot happier because you're making a ton of money. And you might be able to even increase your price a little bit. But if you're on the other side where you overbuilt and you have to cut prices on your apartment units across from Iowa State University, that you overbuilt your place, and instead of thinking that you could get $400 a bedroom, you could only get $350 a bedroom, then that can tend to make a big difference. Right? And again, in the long run, you might be able to, maybe it will work out, but it sure sucks that first couple of years trying to make it work, and maybe you would have been better off not being so optimistic at the beginning. My point with all that is that this is an art form, and from experience, I can tell you it's easy to be overly optimistic with your numbers. You kind of want the deal to come through, and you're only cheating yourself if you get too overly optimistic on what your expectations are. So be careful with that. Questions or comments, Sarah? You guys got a calculation you're trying to figure out? Question or not? Sure. Okay.
So it's better to be pessimistic.
You're not working on something else outside of class, are you?
No.
Okay, good. What's that?
It's better to be pessimistic then?
It's better to be realistic. And that's what's hard to gauge. The bankers are the pessimistic ones. So you kind of run this battle of, maybe I should give you all the inside secrets, but I don't know if it's much of a secret. I think they know what goes on too, but the developer is usually optimistic to the banker, knowing that the banker is pessimistic, and you hope to meet in the middle somewhere. So we hope that the appraisal will come in here so that we get a loan amount that's here, even though it might be in the middle. But internally, whether you should do this deal or not, or whether you should be realistic. Like not too pessimistic, but not too optimistic. When you're looking at your own numbers, this is, you know, and it's not that you're being deceptive, except when you're deceiving yourself, because it's unknown. And so when you're making the decision for yourself, try to be realistic as possible, look at the upper bound, the optimistic and the pessimistic, and kind of, you know, make your decision accordingly. I tended early on to have two rose-colored glasses. I tried to be, oh, well, we'll get this and this and this. Everything will work out this way. Well, didn't always work out that way. And I learned that a lot of my partners tended to be rose-colored glasses too. So we all kind of went that direction. So I learned some important lessons. Lost a lot of money doing stuff like that. All right. So behavioral economics brought in some new things here in the last 20 years. And so we're going to look at a few things with behavior. So in 2008, there's a few airlines that are still doing this, beginning charging for snacks. How did that make you feel, or how does that make you feel? If you used to always get, traditionally, maybe you've seen the Homer Simpson stuff, you know, you get the peanuts, unlimited peanuts if you're in first class, or at least get your little bag of peanuts and the free soda. And if airlines start charging for that, how does that make you feel?
Some people you outraged by something.
Yeah, like some people are absolutely outraged. Now, what have you guys found airline tickets to be roughly? Almost going somewhere in the United States. 250, 300, 400 bucks. Okay. What is that little stinking bag of peanuts from?
50 cents.
50 cents, probably tops, right? And then the half of the soda that they pour you, another 50 cents, 75 cents. So here you got a $400 plane ticket, and you got $1 to $2 worth of little crap that they give you as you're trying to pick up. Well, in an effort to save money, they started, oh, well, maybe we'll just charge for snacks, which sounds like a fair deal, and then we can keep airline ticket prices low. Well, people didn't feel that way, and they would get literally outraged by that to think that they have to do it. Yeah.
How do universities parking?
Yeah, that's a reason.
Not the tuition,
Right.
Questions there.
Right.
$40 a semester.
And that's this semester now, right?
Oh.
Even if you don't live here, even if you don't go to school here, if you are enrolled in classes, whether or not you are student teaching somewhere else, you need to pay a parking fee. Whether or not you have a car, first off.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, they didn't consult with me, because I.
Yeah, they can.
Well, first of all, part of the reason you do stuff like that, because I did this all the time with you. We had 800 apartment units right across from the University of Iowa State, so I've dealt with parking problems for 20 years, and actually I've tried to talk to Dr. Tyner and stuff, you know, to give my 2 cents worth, but I was mostly happy to not have to deal with it. Because it's a tough issue sometimes, but one of the reasons you charge is to actually have people choose the substitute of, I'll just bike to school, I won't bring my car, or whatever. But what you guys are saying doesn't sound like a very good policy.
If you are
If it's
enrolled in
just an
classes.
automatic fee, whether you drive or not.
It's that's tuition.
Oh yeah, we started getting calls like the second I didn't know.
That's an awkward conversation with kids about that.
Yeah.
All the prices, and they're like, oh, a lot of them cars, so I don't care that. Actually,
You do.
Yeah. That's,
I think it
That was
was,
not good.
we named without actually our submitted increase.
Right.
Yeah, but they would have been better off put saying that they
I
put the $40
on
That's gonna be,
on Ari's
that's gonna
page.
be a lesson learned that
I thought-
I couldn't
On Ari's
predict it
Facebook, I
pretty
can
fast.
respond
So
and
it's gonna be
explain
what you were
it.
saying, they had parking problems in the fall.
Yeah, sometimes there was a few parking problems, but not too many parking problems, so it was mostly an effort to just raise money.
Like I said, you put that in activity.
And people
fee,
see
and
through that so fast,
Yeah, you put
especially,
$44 on our tuition, no one notices.
well, especially when it's that obvious, if it says parking fee and you're not, what do you mean I don't even have a car? Oh, yeah, okay, what do you mean?
But that's the important part, is you can tell somebody the tuition, and then you can mention that part, and it's like the airline.
Yeah.
Literally.
No, and that one's got, that's more than the airline peanuts thing, because then that would be like, we're charging you a food fee,
Even-
but I'll just have a glass of water.
I
Well,
mean, if
still have
you
to
want
pay
a
it
hamburger,
anyway.
I'm
Give me
charging you for a
$5.
T-bone.
Yeah, so that one's, I would have not recommended that one. I'm not sure what group, but, I have a feeling that.
I kind of like
Don't put
responded
that on
to a
the-
student about it and explained it.
So,
Seemed reasonable.
the economics behind that's been studied is that consumers tend to feel losses more than gains. Now, this is interesting. You might not have ever thought about this before. We tend to feel losses more than gains. So, if instead the world worked this way, that airlines typically give you nothing, and that's the way it's always been. And then one airline says, I'm going to give you some peanuts, right? The value of the peanuts, the gain that you feel from getting those extra peanuts, is like, oh, well, you gained, right? But now if the world works that you've always gotten peanuts on planes, and now you take away that peanut, the loss of that hurts more than the gain that you got from getting it in the first place, right? The value of the peanuts, the market value is the same. That's irrelevant. It's just human behavior. What our perception is that we feel losses more than we feel gains. And that is a huge thing with marketing of products that you gotta be careful with, is that you need to frame things, and this is really kind of a neat, exciting new area in economics the last 20 years, is a lot of research has been done into how we frame the question. So one study that sticks out in my mind is we gave some mugs like this, and so you guys we're running an experiment. This is a professor at a class, or running some sort of experiment. So the students come in and they say, hey guys, guess what? Got these mugs today. What do you think that mug's worth? And so they give out a number. Oh, it's probably worth $3 or something. No? And so they give a number. They record their answer, whatever. Then another group comes in, and as they come in, there's a mug at their desk, and they say, that mug is yours, right? So the only difference here is that on the first go around, I said, what do you think this mug is worth? This time I said, this mug is yours. These are gifts to you. What do you think that's worth? Now all of a sudden the answer is like $5 because they own it. And so people tend to value things differently depending on how it's framed. The value that you place on it is different depending on the circumstances at hand. And that's kind of what's going on with the peanuts here, and what's going on with the mugs, is that depending on how it was presented to you or how the problem was framed can dramatically change the answers that you get. And so a lot of research has been done on how surveys, how the questions are worded, like how you word something can get different answers from people, even though the content is essentially the same, just like the mug is the same, it's the exact same mug that we put, how you frame the question or design the survey can make an impact on the results that you get. Okay, so that's a little insight into behavioral economics. Questions or comments on that? Have you seen that in real life? Anything come to mind? Another one deals with fairness. So, could Home Depot have raised prices 50% for all the people that had destruction down in Louisiana after Katrina? Yeah, it might not. They might have some long-term consequences, which is one part of this, by the way, as far as whether they could or not, whether it's in their long-term interest to do that. So, but yeah, there might be some ability to raise prices. So in New York City, they've done some studies of the prices of umbrellas. You know how you got all the street vendors in New York City, or those of you who've seen on TV or if you've been there, and so the sun is shining, it's a bright, shiny day, umbrellas, $5 a piece. All of a sudden, the first drops of rain come, $15 for umbrellas, right? Same umbrellas, later on in the afternoon, as soon as the rain starts to come, there's a definite increase in demand that they can take advantage of. All right, so.
There's a difference between Katrina, where people died, and a blizzard or rainstorm.
Right. And it does have to do with, back to this kind of problem, the availability of substitutes. And possibly that's long-term substitutes, right? If we're thinking about your long-term welfare of if somebody thinks they acted fairly under a certain set of circumstances, then you might tend to patronize them long-term. All right. This is kind of a funny one that you might not have known. In fact, I think Britney Spears or what's the blonde gal? They're popular with them. Taylor Swift. Yeah, I think Taylor Swift got kind of busted on this. So, with the advent of ticket pricing on StubHub and all those places, artists started to be able to reserve tickets and then make money themselves on those events, because a lot of times they wouldn't get paid very much to do it if they're trying to get their new album out or something like that. And so sometimes they would get creative on how they did it and then get busted on it. And it seemed to me it was Taylor Swift or somebody else. So they would reserve tickets in their show, like a large block of tickets, and then sell them themselves on the secondary market to make money. So they didn't want to seem like Taylor Swift wouldn't want to seem like, oh, I could charge $500 because she could, let's say, charge $500 for the really nice seats at the Sprint Center. By the way, I heard Justin Timberlake is so JP's up rocking it out tonight. Glad you guys decided to be here instead of at Justin Timberlake. So if they charge the maximum willingness to pay, they might seem like they're not really fair, especially rock stars. Oh yeah, they've got all the money, and so they do it a little more discreetly. And they would get these tickets and sell them on these secondary markets.
Taylor Swift kind of covered her butt on that too. But I agree. I think I've heard that before as well. But some of those tickets she would take and give to first responders, fire, police, things like that. Mm-hmm. My uncle's a police officer, or a fireman in DC, and he gets tickets for stuff all the time. And she's one of the people that would send people to hand out tickets. So she could reserve 50 and give away 20, but still say that's why I reserved the tickets.
Right. Yeah. All right. So that is one thing for there. Okay. So that's our first chapter. Let's take a break. That's done good. So Erica, no luck on your microphone? See a sad face. That means no. almost hear something when you unmute it. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so now we can hear something,
But not you talking.
but not you talking, yeah.
I was just gonna ask.
Sorry, I don't know if you, Gustavo tried to check the adjustments.
Yeah. I really
Maybe try a.
Would you mind going through the algebra?
Maybe trying to restart. Which one?
Is this the Harry Potter thing?
Oh, okay.
I just want to do the algebra on it.
All right, so. All right, so we can swing this over to the other side, bring this over here. So if I go, let me just do the step and. So all I did is I plussed 0.19 to get it over here. I'm just bringing it over to the other side. And then I'm subtracting 4.1. What you do to one side of the equation, you got to do to the other side. And so now we've got 1 minus 0.45, which equals roughly 0.65 or whatever, right? Or 0.55. And then we'd solve for p. So you could bring p back over to that side. P times I'll do it in a couple steps here. P times 0.55 equals 19. And P equals 19 divided by 0.55.
And then how do we get this one into because P over P?
Oh yeah, I would write that out. I mean, to me, this always would screw me up. So I would write this as P minus 19 over P, which then P over P is 1 minus 19. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh well. Yeah, I think it had to be
Okay.
definitely doesn't need it.
All our kids are back.
That's why I stay on. No, this
Hey,
is
Russ,
one
I will
minus
not be here the next 2 weeks to equal.
Okay.
Zooming
in though?
Well, I'm hoping to. I will be at fairs, so
Bears.
yeah, showing my cows. Well,
That's some cows.
yeah, cows.
got some cows.
That I do. So
All right. Well,
next week.
I can't stress enough the importance of it, so I would put it as
No, I know,
a
I know.
high priority in your life to find a Wi-Fi and make it.
Yeah, that's.
You should just walk around. You're like showing your cow, and then you're like, other hand is your phone.
Well, I will not be showing at 6 o'clock on Wednesday night, so I may be sitting at McDonald's.
Well, I'm planning ahead, I guess. Where are you at? The state fair?
I will be at the state fair in not next
Well,
week,
that's
the week after.
Where are you at?
I'm in Illinois.
Oh,
No. So.
well, plan ahead, find a Starbucks.
No, yeah.
Okay.
If not, I guess I'll call in or whatever.
Yeah, you can do that too. Yeah, if you don't have, so you saw the call-in number. That works pretty well too. If you have audio.
Is that final in class?
Oh, I don't know. I would assume it would be like an active test. I'm gonna feel like that's so hard.
Who got 100?
I don't know. But who's the other guy? Mohammed.
I think he got it. No, Muhammad, but I got it.
Yeah, it's even him from Keith, definitely.
Got the 30.
You should have been here in class. 40.
You're 40,
What'd you get?
maybe.
No, you should have been
How
here
did
in
you
class
get 80?
because he timed it, like,
You tell yeah.
You timed it
10
for us
minutes.
too. We were at the same time you guys were.
I went to his office and he gave me the same quiz at 10 minutes.
and that's fine.
Because I was on video and we just had to like email it to him.
Right.
But there was one of them that like I couldn't type the answer or like
Wait.
couldn't look at it fast
So
enough.
you zoomed in?
Yeah.
How did you take the quiz then?
Well, he like put it up on there
Yeah.
and like screen shared or whatever, and then I just emailed him my answers. So I was like, you physically could not look up like help fast enough. Because I like tried to Google it really fast.
You didn't screenshot it?
He wanted answers right then. He like made an email it to him, like,
Oh,
like
right
okay,
away.
press send. And then one of them I was like, the answer's 33, but I don't know if that's A, B, C, or D. Like, he's like, okay.
The first thing I like to do because like I just go to, okay, well, no.
So I don't know, like, we have RA training starting on Sunday, like, I don't know when the hell I do that.
Get out of here, our preseason starts, I'm done for.
I know.
We got 3 days for 2 weeks. I don't know what I'm gonna step in. We're going on a camping trip.
So did you get this?
Yeah, I mean, I still don't really get the 1 over, how P over P equals 1, but
How do I get those?
I feel like I'm just, I didn't take
P
much
over
in high
P,
school.
like, if you divide those.
I'm
Well,
It's not
But
zero.
the P is a letter, how does a letter equal a number?
He'll say it all in the make sense, he goes, do it.
Oh, God.
I got Oh.
The second one was easier. The first one I really didn't understand, and I understand a little bit. Just assume that P over P was, I don't know why.
So P minus
P over P.
It really pisses me off that you can't log into this book for more than an hour. They'll kick you out.
I printed all the chapters and,
Oh, what printer?
athletics. Talked about lower. I don't do it like in one day.
Come into my office.
I was never really there.
No, no.
Hard to stand by. I see him more like at his house on like off time than I do now.
So did we learn anything in the first chapter?
Anybody absorb anything?
Other
Like I feel like I can sit down and I can
than,
like
you
work it out.
Sorry, cows.
Oh,
Oh, that's it. That's why you
Wait, when does RA training start and what's it done?
Sunday. And it starts on Sunday and it starts on the 3rd and they're done on the 11th. Because that's when you're at.
Right,
You have one kid,
Claudia's RA.
Claudia's an RA, and there's one kid that John's recruit is moving in on the 9th.
I don't know about this guy.
But yeah, then that Monday is the 11th, and all the rest of your kids move in. And then you have training with them after that. Except for during orientation.
So I saw this in my house and I did it. I would never do it again.
What?
One thing, 2 days, 3 days. Does it work? It does, but
Not good.
it's okay.
Maybe you needed more than me.
So maybe I need more eggs.
You
know
need
what?
more sugar.
I did 1 banana and 2 eggs and 8 bacon. My cousin in online and I took it and I tried it.
Do you syrup or no?
No, it was too sweet.
Maybe you should put some.
Well, you can do like substitute
Banana
bananas
bread.
for all sorts of
Yeah.
stuff. Like if you don't have any eggs, I think you can substitute bananas for eggs for the recipe. Is our final an in-class test or a take-home test or a? figure.
I'm gonna leave it at potentially a little bit of both right
What was the question?
Define what the style is an in-class.
now. I've done it both ways.
So let's make an argument for a take home test.
So I do it on my kid.
So I can.
I'm just gonna, that's all I'm gonna say, is we'll leave it as a possibility of both at this time.
I brought brownies, by the way.
On that note, I have to bring cookies every day. So. It's like good test anxiety. I've never had test anxiety until now.
Alright, well,
Yeah, I feel like it's
Do you still own any of those properties and names?
yeah, a couple.
Do you recommend investing in college towns for housing?
Oh, that's a loaded question. That depends on you.
What about autos?
So, with college kids, students, yeah, so the positives are you don't have to worry about maintenance and stuff as much as with non-student or non-traditional student type people that just tend not to care. And for the most part, you're dealing with people who pay their bills. They either got student loans or whatever, so that's another positive for college student housing. The negative is the broken stuff, maintenance, puke, pee, excrement that you have to scrape up. The common areas, yeah, that sort of stuff. So there can be a lot of that you have to deal with. So, and then during the financial crisis, we saw some people not paying their rents because mom and dad were out of a job. So kind of the traditional, college, we usually got our rent started to turn on us in a way that we didn't expect or didn't see in the past. Because a lot of mom and dad dependent students now didn't have mom and dad to pay for the bills.
I've been always telling myself that I want to do this with college town.
I think that there's no easy money, so there's always competition, in most markets. I mean, we were kind of a dominant player just from the real estate that we had positioned was, we had the most units, just a block from campus. But over time, other places started to open up that were nice, they were cheaper, they were farther, but they were able to lower themselves enough to make the commute worth it for students. And so, that was a different type of competition. So
Was housing really thinking? Is that what your deal was? Was housing?
it started off that way, and then we got into some commercial development. So we did a building in downtown Des Moines that had 5 restaurant bar type places. One was a 800-person live music venue kind of in downtown Des Moines.
There's a Larry Brown. Like Massachusetts.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I haven't stayed too much on the real estate scene. Once I came down here, I was pretty content to cool it on the real estate business for a while, and I've been loving that. Even though I still do have a few of these properties up there.
My friends invested in the college bar that we all worked at. Is the world's crappiest bar, like worse than the Hill.
Florida?
Yeah. And it's so crappy that's like the thing about it is that it's crappy. So
Right.
they don't have to fix it, like kind of mop stuff up every night, but that's about it.
Yeah, the same thing applies at most college towns too, that the bar business is similar.
But then you don't earn nothing in the summer, like close.
Right. Then we're down to the shutdown part of it, right, where you're not covering your variable costs, and so yeah, a lot of them shut down in the summer.
In the summer, they're only open on Wednesdays for poker. A bunch of old guys come play poker.
All right, so these next two chapters deal with what we call price discrimination. So it turns out discrimination is perfectly legal in some forms, right? So we're all familiar with the religion, race, gender, all of the protected classes. But price discrimination is different. You're charging different prices to different people, not based on those things, but based on something else. So it's possible to discriminate with your price, charge different price. So the formal definition for price discrimination is charging different prices to different people for the same good. And that's legal in some cases, as long as it's not based on race, religion, gender, blah, blah, blah. Okay? So that's the idea. And these are the three key things that you need for successful price discrimination. So differing demand elasticities. In other words, if all of your buyers have exactly the same demand curves, it's not going to work. You're not going to be able to charge different prices to different people because there's not a way to group them up. So the second thing is being able to legally separate the groups of buyers. So students are not a protected class. So we can have student discounts. Do you guys know of any student discounts? Movie theater, good. Restaurants, what'd you say?
Retail.
Retail shops, you might be able to get a little bit of a break on something, right? So students are not a protected class. So we need to be able to separate them is another thing. How do we separate students? In other words, how do we keep a guy like me going in there and saying, oh yeah, you guys have a student discount, don't you? I'm a student.
Student ID.
You gotta show your ID, right? So you need to be able to separate out those students in a legal way. And so having a student ID is a perfect mechanism. That is pretty hard to forge that. It's possible, but it's fairly difficult. So be able to separate the group. So if you're a McDonald's gets away with the senior coffee, so senior citizen discounts, another possibility. All right, and then this last one is that the good is difficult or impossible to resell. So if we start thinking about the movie theater you guys mentioned, the senior copy, right? Why doesn't it work for case beer? Why don't we see the liquor store having a student discount for a case
Well, I think
beer?
they do.
Okay, so what about the selling? It is not because they're going to sell it anyway to the student.
Well, so a student doesn't buy 10 cases of beer and then sell them to people
Good.
and
That's the thing we're trying to avoid, is the resale thing. So all of a sudden there's a student parked outside and he sees an old guy like me coming up to the liquor store and he's like, hey, tell you what, I'll get you 10% off your purchase. What are you buying? Oh, I'm going to get a case of beer. 10%? Yeah, that sounds good, because he gets 20% student discount. So he walks in, buys the case of beer, comes out, he makes a little money, I make a little discount, and away we go. And who gets screwed? The liquor store, right? So the price discrimination scheme doesn't work out. The original intent for offering a student discount is what? Why do we, are they trying to be nice to you?
To bring customers in.
Okay, to bring customers in because you're on a budget. Okay, what else? What about being on a budget, that sort of thing? If we think of movie theater tickets that are, what's the retail price going now? Almost $9 for Grandma, $8.50 for the Lawrence during normal times.
No, I'm more likely, I think, like we were just talking about behavioral stuff, like I'm more likely to go to a $9 movie if I get a 10% discount versus just going to an $8 movie.
Okay. Okay, so that, yeah, that's a different element. That's a good point. So that's a different type. That's more on the behavioral side. So with this chapter, we're not so much looking on the behavior, but we're trying to get extra sales. And so if the $9 ticket keeps you out, but $7 will get you in, can we somehow separate out the markets so that we get the students coming and we don't lose too many students. Let's just assume that the students' elasticity for tickets is fairly elastic. So if you charge $9 versus $7, you drop $2, you're going to sell a whole bunch more tickets, right? There's some students that are going to still go to the movie at 9, so we're not saying it's completely out of the ordinary, but you're going to have this big quantity effect. And so if you're the movie theater, you want to be able to get that extra revenue because, again, how much does it cost you to allow another person in the door to watch that movie? Almost next to nothing, if we're not at capacity, right? As long as we're not shutting out full ticket buyers, but assuming if you've been to any movie lately, what's the last movie you've been to that was sold out? You almost can't think of
And
it.
a lot of times those movies that are gonna be sold out, you can't get a student discount. Even if the theater normally offers.
That's true, yeah.
Like
They
if
might,
it's Harry Potter night, you can't use
they
the
might
student
just
discount
remove
night.
that, yeah, sorry,
Because
no
they know you're gonna
discounts
do it
tonight.
anyway.
Right, that's right. So they might make adjustments. Okay, so those are the 3 conditions that we need to be thinking about. And then it's actually the next chapter that talks more about indirect price discrimination. So what if you can't ID the members of the groups, or you can't prevent arbitrage? Is there a way to get the, let's say, the low-income people like the students doing it? There's maybe other low-income people that aren't students that we'd like to have come to the theater. You know, is there some way we can do that? And so that's where we might get into couponing. So some people might be willing to clip coupons, but again, it's kind of a pain in the butt. You gotta look for coupons, you gotta dig them up. Maybe some people, let's just call them rich people, but you know, whatever, people with a little more money that would normally pay it will go find that coupon too. But otherwise, it's lower income people that will take the time to find the coupons, and that'll get them to come to the movie too. So we're not identifying that person, they're not showing their student ID, but they're indirectly revealing themselves by the fact that they were willing to go clip a coupon and bring a coupon to the movie theater. You know what I mean? So we're kind of being a little sneaky sometimes on how we might have, how we might price discriminate, depending on what we face.
Is that the same for a sporting event that's got like standing room tickets?
Possibly, yeah, that could be part of it. So
What is it? Considered price discrimination if anybody can buy it?
Yes, it'd be indirect price discrimination if anybody can buy it.
A good one for the indirect one would be like Price Shopper, you know, the coupons on the back of the receipts.
Mm-hmm.
Take those off.
Any kind of couponing is typically a indirect pricing scheme, because again, what happens is it'll fail if all people use the coupons. Then it's like, why didn't you do it in the first place? But what they find is that high-income people won't use the coupons because whatever reasons they
With
have.
that, you know your advertisement at Price Shopper is working with your coupon coming back in.
Right. There could be some measurement stuff like that going on too. All right. So let's have a little practice here. Direct or indirect, and I think we've kind of answered some of these. Tickets to a movie theater, senior citizens, student discount, direct or indirect? Direct. Grocery store, discount coupons, in-store weekly newspaper. Indirect. Airlines, business versus economy tickets. Indirect. Good. So we don't necessarily know which one's which. The business people could be charging or could be buying the economy tickets. Now, one thing with the airlines that they have taken advantage of, if we think about airline tickets, wouldn't it make sense that they would drop their price if it's just a few days before the flight takes off? That if there's empty seats in the plane, that it would make sense to just fill up the plane? Kind of like back to our example of the stadium. You've got an airplane with 200 seats. Wouldn't it make sense, like it's just a week out and the plane is only 75%, that we should just cut our price?
Then everybody would know that and wait for the last.
Okay, so then we have some long-term behavior going like that. And then there's something else that's true that people might not have thought about with related to business.
Maybe people who find out at the last minute they're going somewhere.
Yes.
Basically have to.
They have to pay it, right? They're more inelastic, right? So if you are if all of a sudden something comes up, oh, I gotta get to California. Well, that happens in business a lot, right? So all of a sudden there's a new deal and man, 2 weeks, we gotta be in California, go book the tickets right now, right? So within 2 weeks, you do not want to book tickets with an airline. They tend to raise their prices 2 weeks out because they take advantage of those inelastic customers who have to travel. All of a sudden, people who are within 2 weeks, their demand curve looks like this, and we can jack up the prices, right? We can raise the prices on it. And business people can tend to afford that because there might be a $100,000 deal waiting in the wings, right? And so if the normal price 3 weeks to a month out would have been $400, for them to pay $800, who cares? I don't care what it is, right? I gotta get to California. We got a $1 million deal we're putting together, so it doesn't matter. So they kind of do indirect pricing that way to capture what their willingness to pay is by the time of the trip. Okay. Oh, let's see. Let's see if you guys got any on your own here. Ottawa, how?
I mean, Ottawa Indians.
Oh, the Ottawa Indians. That is probably not so much a price discrimination scheme as it is just from their heritage and what's happened, transpired over time.
I would say.
Although I take that back a little bit because, at least I'm pretty sure of this, the Ottawa, and you can probably help me out on this, the Ottawa Indians still play room and board or not?
No.
They got room and board covered too, okay. So in some cases in other areas, we charge room and board, and so we still get that, even if we give them 100% ride on the tuition. So, okay,
I was gonna say athletes, because
okay,
some get
huge.
bigger.
We do it all the time, yeah. So now that you guys are in the graduate assistant thing, you start to see, oh, that's why we do this, right? So this is all, it's a big price discrimination setup. If we can get that athlete to come and pay as much as they're willing to pay, well, we have to just structure the right scholarship to get them to come. Now, in reality, what happens is the more talented athletes, the highly skilled people, the ones we really want, do they get the bigger discount or the smaller one? They get the bigger, of course, right? But does it always work out that way? No, not necessarily, depending on if one guy who we really wanted accepted the scholarship already, and then another guy comes along that's maybe even more skilled or talented, but we kind of filled it up, we kind of work with it as we go. So it's a price discrimination scheme in the sense that the cost of putting another butt in this seat to Ottawa University is again how much? To put another butt in this seat for McCullough's class? What does it cost the university? Nothing. Basically nothing, right? To get more bodies at this university, the additional cost is close to nothing. Some administrative paperwork or whatever, but close to nothing. So if we can offer them a scholarship of, you name it, it's in our best interest to bring that person. Other than, we got to be careful not to create long-term problems of, having some sort of structure that we basically don't let them know. Do we tell our athletes that they're free to publicize what their scholarship is, or do we tell them that they should keep it to themselves, that this is private information? I don't know how, honestly, I'm just asking that question, I'm not sure how. What's that? You're not allowed to talk about it.
We never say anything for our athletes.
Right.
For people, like, just common sense wise, you don't want to be like, well, how much is your scholarship? And, she says, I've got $10,000. I'm like, well, crap, they only gave me $2,000.
Right.
Like,
Right.
just common sense. Either you're going
Now,
to.
some of that's just politeness, possibly, that we don't talk about that sort of thing.
Yeah, but they do.
But they
a lot.
do, but it's to Ottawa's advantage to say we don't talk about that type of thing, right? And whether they do or not, hopefully we keep that type of talk down. So that they don't start having hard feelings about, well, you got this much and you got this much. But that is definitely right in line with the price discrimination scheme, and something that I've talked to some of the administration that we don't do enough of it at the other sites. Not so much the traditional campus here. We've been doing price discrimination for the last probably 100 years, or ever since there was student athletes. But at the adult sites, we don't do this much. It's pretty much been, this is our sticker price, this is what we charge for the MBA program, this is what we charge. And now we have started to do some of that in some areas. So with the Johnson County Community College Initiative, students are able to continue on from their associate's degree with an Ottawa University degree at a substantially lower per credit hour price. But how many of you are familiar with that package? I know Clay is here. You are. So,
couldn't like repeat it to you.
in a nutshell, if you went to Johnson County, and we're doing this in Arizona too at some of the community colleges. So if you went there, Ottawa University says, hey, continue on with your degree with Ottawa University, and we're going to give you a price of, I think it's $275, is that right? Or in the right ballpark? And normally tuition is $500, so it's a substantial discount, $550, and I think for the tuition rates for credit hours. But here's the catch. You have to have gotten your associate's degree with Johnson County, so you had to be within their organization. And then you have to stay continuously enrolled, so you can't like take a break from classes and then go. And so, how are we using some of the 3 things that I put up on the board? What are the 3 things again?
They can't resell it.
They can't resell it. Good. So they can't resell their education, right? We got that going. So we got one of those things
You can
done.
identify them because they have transcripts from Johnson County.
We can identify them, right? They went to Johnson County, you fit this program. No, sorry, transfer student or somebody else from Arizona, or somebody from California, you don't qualify for this program. You can, if you want to go to 2 years at Johnson County and go through the program, you're welcome to, right? So good, and what else? Different demand elasticities. Community college students tend to be, willingness to pay is really high or low? Low, right? So we've got students that maybe come from various backgrounds. We don't know why they're there. By the way, I went to community college, so there's all kinds of, people from various backgrounds that are there, but we know that their willingness to pay might be different than another student coming from the outside with whatever resources they have at their disposal. So we've met all 3 conditions for price discrimination, and guess what we found about the program? It's been pretty successful.
We're doing that with leadership.
Right, and we're extending it, and so now we're branching into other community colleges, and it was really a relationship thing to kind of forge our way into it. And we were one of the kind of early colleges to come up with this idea, and there's going to be other people following suit. But what you find is there can often be a first mover advantage. If we get our foothold in the door and we offer this deal, then even if there's other people that come up with other deals, and I think I don't know how well we signed an exclusive arrangement with Johnson County Community College that we can't do this with other ones or not. I can't remember all those details. Do you play with that?
They have, not so much with the Johnson County stuff.
Yeah. So as much as we can, we probably try to contract that away so that they can't just start doing this with every, then they go to Harvard and Stanford and start doing it.
Do they still get that? Football campus?
No, that's the other thing. See, they have to stay in their cohort. So then we've got a group of students that went to JCC, and then they have to stay together, and then originally they were taking their classes at Johnson County Community College with an Ottawa University professor giving them. Now we've started to have them take classes at Overland Park. But no, they can't come to OU and start taking classes. Right, no, they don't qualify.
I was like,
why do I not
have a
know
better
this?
setup anyways? I mean, our whole.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, so lots of interesting possibilities.
I know,
right?
that's why, maybe we should change that.
Okay, give this a little, oh, sorry, I don't even have screen share going, or do I? You can see that? Thumbs up, thumbs down, no? My bad, without having the audio, I just caught that. Well, you haven't missed too much, because it's mostly been my audio at this point, but my talking. All right, so now even Erica can read this. Okay, so let's talk about this little part first. So there's this rule of thumb with entering into new markets that the firm with the largest share at 10% penetration. What does the 10% penetration mean? We're into a new market. What's that?
Yeah, 10% of that.
It's not that company specifically. That product, right? So at 10, so the company with the largest share at 10% penetration of the market, as far as getting that new cell phone, where there's multiple cell phone providers. Once we're into the market 10%, so if we take the population and 10% of the population or 10% of the area, however they're defining it, once we get to that point, whoever's the leader at 10% will tend to grow to 40% without marketing. And when the market penetration grows to 30%. So it's kind of a big deal to be the largest share at the 10% penetration mark. So this is just what they found over time with different studies. All right, so what issues might IRK face if they start charging a lower price in the Philippines? So they're going to price discriminate, potentially.
So local people will see it as like a big switch.
Okay.
And they're most likely gonna be stuck with that lower price when the market gets larger.
All right, so that might be one fear, is that when they start with a lower price, they might be stuck with it. And then you were saying maybe the local people wouldn't even buy it in the first place because they just see it as a bait and switch. But if the local people don't, if it's new to the market, they might not even know that at all. Depending on, I guess they can shop globally on Amazon and see what they're looking for.
Competitor entered at really good timing.
Okay.
That and the other people may see that they entered this market at a lower cost, so they want the same cost for themselves. So kind of like
What other people?
like the other buyers,
Other
worldwide
buyers. Good. Okay, so this phone's being sold around the world, right? And they're thinking, hey, if we get into this market, let's cut our price here. And
So like me, like in America, like I would go onto a Philippines website or whatever, or like call down there and ask for them to ship me the cheaper phone because
Right.
it's cheaper to pay that price plus shipping.
Right.
Versus the
so
American
which
price.
of the three things that we learned about in order to be a successful price discriminator is potentially violating?
resale.
A resale, right? So the ability to resell the product. All right, so that is what they started to do, was to try to get these get these phones into people's hands to try to break that 10% barrier. They reduced the prices to $90. This was their answer to the price discrimination problem.
And then that whole jailbreaking thing.
Okay, so somebody's familiar with jailbreaking. I wouldn't even know that except for my son jailbroke iPhone. So you're with the lingo. So yeah, what does it mean to jailbreak?
Like basically it's bypassing, that's like full point.
All right, so some Turkish hackers figured out the SIM lock pretty fast, and 15,000 phones were all of a sudden being dumped onto their market. So they tried to prohibit the resale thing, but it failed. Right?
They're like a completely different hardware, but fairly work.
Yeah, probably. They would need to. I know T-Mobile and AT&T had the same thing going on where whether the SIM was broken or not.
Well, even like a Verizon phone, like when I went to Europe, I couldn't use my phone that I had here in Europe because that hardware physically does not work on the European network.
So they changed
So
the
they
actual
physically
hardware.
changed the hardware. So you had to have a different actual phone in addition to having the other network.
Right. So they got kind of savvy. This is kind of old school days here. But they ended up having a happy ending once they got over the Turkish hacking thing. So they were able to raise the prices back up later. So the bait and switch wasn't a problem. So people still bought it. And once they got into it, now, we use the bait and switch, kind of strange, but when there's new technology, did they really bait and switch them? Or how might this company frame it, since we were talking about
It was like a
framing?
beta test or like a new exploratory.
Okay, new exploratory, they might frame it that way. Did the people know how much they were going to value it when they got it? With new technologies, do you always understand like how much what your real willingness to pay is? Can you guys live without your smartphones right now?
I remember
did you?
first got a smartphone, the guy saw it, and it was like, all right, once you do this, we're never gonna be able to go back.
Right. So a lot of times we don't know, especially with new technology, like how much we really do demand it, right? And so this isn't always true with products, but especially cutting edge products and true entrepreneurs kind of think, well, they don't know what they want, right? So we kind of create our own demand. Supply creates its own demand. In some cases, not all cases, that some entrepreneurs are able to create a market because once they get it in people's hands, then they see the value of it. And it's still voluntary. Nobody's forcing them to buy these phones at the higher prices. But perhaps they now recognize, like, oh, yeah, I'll buy it, no problem, for 120, whereas that might have prohibited them from buying it before.
Well, can't you kind of do it the opposite way too? Like where a new iPad comes out and it's $300 more than the old iPad, or even like an iPad first coming out, that it's kind of the opposite. Like you don't know the value, but this is where, kind of saying, the manufacturer saying it's worth it.
Yes.
You're gonna love it.
And so is that a price discrimination scheme? Did the new iPad have $300 worth of extra bells and whistles to it?
What they say that was the retina.
Right.
Your retina is so good.
Which only really affects like designers. Like that's the only reason I bought this particular computer was because the Retina, which affects me doing my graphic design work.
Oh,
but other than that,
staring at a
people
screen.
have no
Not
idea.
familiar with the Retina thing. It's something they did with you can actually stare at the screen longer and
well, it improves the display. So like I can see like normally if I wanted to see how something's gonna print out, I'd have to print out it and look at it under,
Oh,
like, basically
so
look
super
under,
high
under a
resolution or
magnifying
something?
glass, but now I can actually see what it's gonna look like printed on my computer.
Okay.
It just
Okay.
improves it.
All right, well, I have a little bit different Apple example coming up here shortly. But first, this Robinson-Patman Act kind of discouraged discounts. So this was kind of a big deal with discounts. We often think about volume discounts being available, but this act was looking to just protect small businesses that couldn't maybe buy in that volume, but did it really help the consumers? It was kind of the question. So sometimes this is looked at as a negative for the consumers and kind of an act of protectionism. So it prohibits price discounts on a good sold to another business. So on business to business, and what they were trying to do was with wholesalers to retailers, the fact that Walmart could buy a whole bunch, they weren't allowed to discount their price to Walmart based on volume discounts. All right, so that's just something to keep in mind here. This one might kick you off. Have you ever heard anything like this going on? You got another example come to mind? There's a few cases of this type of thing. So all they did was click, whether you're, how they have are you a business customer or a personal or home use? You click, this is the price you got if you're a business, this is the price, same exact computer.
Basically, the cell phones again, I'm going to the price of actual bill itself.
Okay.
If you're a business, they'll give you some sort of discount. You'll have like 5 lines. Where
Okay.
it's like if you add up to 5 lines, you're paying this price.
Now, would it be the same for residential and business, or because we want it to be kind of the same thing? So here, the computer was identical.
Yeah, the service is going to be identical.
Okay.
You're still getting.
But were you required to have that number of lines though?
I don't think so, but I'm thinking you get up these without the addition of the $9.99.
Yeah, I think traditionally that's happened that way.
What are some more examples? It seems like all the examples I'm thinking of are.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Adobe does it exactly like
That
this.
business is cheaper, or
Yeah, they offer like a mass discount. Businesses
Well,
offer more.
Or I'm saying quantity, not necessarily.
well, here's one for you. Mary Lou and I tested this, and it was true. If you searched for, I think it was plane tickets we were looking at. If you searched from a Mac, you got one price that was different than if you searched from a PC.
And if you search more often.
Oh, well, I'm gonna stop searching.
So they assume that only rich people with very inelastic demands search for Macs, that there's a higher willingness to
But
pay.
at a certain point, they can't. If you use Safari, it'll affect it. But if you're using Firefox, you can't tell.
Yeah. So, well,
Or Chrome.
doesn't the IP address actually identify
No,
whether
it
it's a
just is
Mac
your
or
network.
PC or not, or is it just the network? So it's through the network.
So it's through like what internet.
Okay, so
like,
you're
if you're
going through
using
Safari. I didn't know that
Internet
part.
Explorer, if you're using Safari, which is the regular
Right.
what people
Right.
normally use. But I mean, I use Firefox on here.
Yeah, or if you use Chrome or
whatever.
something, but Safari is Mac only.
Yeah.
So yeah, and we
Searching
tested it
for
once,
Safari.
and she got a higher price on something. I can't remember. I think it was a plane ticket.
Well, plane tickets also do that if you search it more than.
And it wasn't much. It wasn't much more than $10 or $20 or whatever, but you know, they can successfully do that. Yeah, interesting.
I know, like Adobe does it exactly like that. Because you have to select, but you kind of have to prove what you are. Like if you're
On
at,
Adobe,
on
for student,
Adobe.
you're talking about for,
well, they do like a student discount, but also for businesses, like if you were a university purchasing Adobe for, say, if you had a computer lab,
yeah,
it's a different price than if you were a office purchasing Adobe for your computers.
right.
I mean, it's all based, you know, you kind of have to prove it though. You have to go
Yeah,
and
some
like
of them they can
register.
verify if you're an educational institution
Yeah.
and stuff like that. Yep. All right, so consumers do not like knowing that they're paying higher prices. Only schmucks pay retail. Have you ever had that feeling? Like when when you paid a higher price than somebody else, and how that makes you feel, right? Just kind of get that sinking feeling. Well, in theory, you know, you agreed to that price, you should be happy with that price. And, you know, sometimes I feel that way, sometimes I feel like I got screwed. So that is, again, kind of a human behavior thing that companies have to be aware of. What do you do when you have a box or a promo code if you're buying something? If you see like there's a promo code entry box.
You search for a promo
You search
code.
for a promo code, right? So that's exactly what they found is that online when they started to have promo codes, you know, you'd be like, oh, what do you mean? There's a discount? I don't want to be a schmuck. I want to go find that. And so they found that the click-through rates declined and they would lose those customers. So some sites started changing how they did the discount codes because they might start to lose some sales. All right, so one of the main things with price discrimination is you gotta keep it secret if you can. You know, some things are gonna leak out, but just like we kind of tell the students, hey, don't talk to people about your tuition. Your employer, often when we talk pay, how much you're being paid hourly, you are not supposed to talk to your other employees about what your pay is, right? So that's kind of similar too on how much wages are, because they might be price discriminating potentially a little bit there. So all kinds of places. All right. Oh, we can do, yeah, this one's kind of interesting. So this was a conference. So kind of a big national or international conference.
That's some sort of identification.
Okay. How?
You have to put in your visa number.
All right. So might be able to do that. So somehow prove that you were a foreigner or something. Now, would that still possibly create that fairness issue of you felt like, well, that's not fair that they're having to pay more or something if you're treating the out-of-towners better than me? It could possibly enter. So they needed to separate it somehow. What they did is oops, thought they had the answer coming up, but that's okay. I will just talk about it as I move. They sent out the conference registrations individually to all the foreigners. So that was their way of handling that, as opposed to making it public on a website, let's say. All right. Next chapter just kind of rolls right along with this. This is on indirect, which we already talked about in the previous one. Here's your iPhone example. You guys might remember this. This wasn't too long ago.
And I think a lot what happens really with Apple is that it's so important for. I am a total Apple person. I have Apple. I have an iPad, an iPhone, a Mac, I have a TV, the whole nine yards. and I need it like the day it comes out. So I know, I am fully aware that in 2 months that price is gonna go down $100. I don't care.
And you don't care. Yeah. So, I mean, that in and of itself is a kind of a price discrimination scheme that clothing stores do all the time, right? So if you're a person that has to have the latest, greatest fashions and stuff, you know, the consumer knows that this is going to be on sale 2 months from now. But 2 months from now, everybody else is going to have it, and I want to be the first person to be wearing the new outfit or the new thing or the new shoes or, you know, whatever it is. So clothing, apparel type places have been doing this for years, and you start high, and then 2 months later you have a sale, 6 months later you have another sale, and yeah, before you know it, you're down here, but you sorted out the high value customers from the low value customers because due to that pricing scheme. Because another approach would be to say, instead of starting off at $100, let's just start it off at $80 or $50 and just sell it, keep it constant the whole time. But instead, by price discriminating, we can sort out the high value customers are the ones that want it now and they're willing to pay for it. So we charge high, they get it now, and then we start the discount. Right? So again, it depends on the type of product. You guys ever think about this 4 gig versus the 8 gig pricing? Especially if you're Apple. The only Apple thing that I got involved with was this device right here. This is the iPod 5, I think, right, or something. So the difference between the 8 gig and the 16 gig was like $100, I think, or it was close to that. And if you start thinking to yourself, what's the marginal cost of Apple to put in memory from 8 to 16?
Not much.
Not much.
But you can't put it in.
That's right.
If you were to buy like a PC versus a regular computer, you can physically open that computer up and put memory in there.
Well,
You can't do it.
That's right. So Apple keeps that stuff locked down, just like they kind of force you. They don't keep their old operating systems updated, forcing the consumers to have to buy the new one. Now they've lost customers over time. I mean, some people have defected. Apparently not all. Some people have defected to the PC because they're ticked off that Apple comes out with a new one and they don't maintain the old, you know, the old operating
They
system.
just have a hopper full of new stuff. It's nothing like they just came up with something.
Oh, this, like they came up with this stuff like years ago.
Extreme.
They're already doing it like
Right.
Apple iStore or whatever, you know,
Right.
doing something else.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. So that's all just part of their business model. Is the bottom line. It is what it is, but they know or they expect ahead of time. Maybe some stuff will work. Hopefully we won't tick off too many people. Hopefully the demand for each Apple line looks like this. If they screw up and the demand is actually more elastic, they lose a bunch of customers, right? And over time, this elasticity changes as the Samsung Galaxy starts to be a better and better substitute for the iPhone. Then the elasticity of demand can start to change. And so Apple is also keeps a careful eye on what they think the elasticity of demand is for their product. But this is just pure pricing scheme to have the 4 gig versus the 8 or the 16 versus the 32. I mean, there's just close to nothing probably for cost for them to put that in.
Now,
So that makes me wonder why they did this then. Because you would think that they could double up, somebody's like, oh, I ran out of room.
Yeah, I'm sure they play the game of not wanting to. I mean, your user experience changes if you start to run out of memory too, right? And so the consumer naively thinks, oh, the 4 is cheaper, I'll just get the 4, and then they're pissed off at Apple when they download a couple apps and they're out of memory and they can't get their next music. They're like, I hate Apple. I'm going to go to Samsung, right? You know what I mean? So they kind of have to play that
They
game.
would just buy it.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And so then they play the game more of we're just gonna keep the 16 or the 32 or the 4, you know, whatever, as technology grows, we're gonna, 16 is plenty for most people. The high value customer probably won't even use the extra 16, but they don't know that, but they don't care. They want the best, the biggest, you know, whatever, they don't care. And so we're really just price discriminating. We're just grabbing onto dollars that are out there of consumer surplus. We're just able to extract that from the consumer because they're not necessarily caring or rationally thinking whether they're going to use that extra 16 gig or not.
And Apple did a similar thing when they came out with the 5S and the 5C, is they reached into another market because they were losing that lower market, that the people that wanted smartphones but couldn't really afford them.
Yeah.
And so they created the 5C. So like I still want the 5S because that's the new great thing. But you know, my friend is like, oh, I can finally get a smartphone now. Maybe they're 5C.
I'm just trying to figure out.
We're trying to do this.
Oh, well, you're gonna lose some points because that is engaging in a device outside of class. Okay, so that's what I don't want you guys to do. So shut down all that stuff. You ask me if you want to do it as a little class experiment, but I really don't want you guys doing that on your own. Okay. All right. So anything else on iPhone, iPad? How many people got a inkjet printer or have had one in the past? What did you find out about those ink cartridges? Cheap? Expensive?
You should research that before you buy it.
Okay, so they tend to be pretty expensive, right? You've gone out and had them, they're like, why is this so freaking expensive? When you bought the whole big printer that does all the fancy stuff, it was all of, how much? 80 bucks, 90 bucks, they've come down in price. They used to be 200, now they're next to nothing. And then you go to buy your first set, if you buy the color cartridges, you can drop 50 bucks on just the ink cartridge, right? So almost the same price. Well, does that make sense? Well, it makes sense to them because they're just doing a price discrimination scheme. Inkjet printers and inkjet cartridges are what in consumption? Complements, right? So they go together. So we kind of got that thing going on here with the cartridges and the printers. So if we lower the price of one, we might be able to push people into sales of the other. And you can see the numbers are pretty big here on what they did. How does movies and popcorn work?
With the movie tickets cheaper, you're gonna still go in and buy the $6 popcorn.
The $6 popcorn, right? So we kind of bring people in the door. Once they're there, they go with the compliment. Gotta have popcorn with the movie. Razor blades and razors. If you've noticed, you buy the full razor and it's only $7, and then you go to buy the little razor blade refills. Those guys here, and they are, yeah. Well, I guess ladies too did the same thing with. You just buy a new razor, yeah. And you kind of weigh it out. Usually they make it so that it maps out to be kind of close, but yeah. So same type of thing. All right, so here's what they're thinking, and what you guys need to think as MBA students going out into the world with whatever good you're trying to sell, is that you've got two different consumers out there. Again, this is indirect price discrimination. So we can't have them pull out their ID. We don't know who's who, right? We're trying to have people self-sort themselves into different categories. And so we got low-value consumers. We're just saying that they don't place as high value on the printer at $100 for with a cartridge. And then we got the high-value consumers at $200 value for the printer and 2 cartridges. So one strategy is to do $50 for the printer and $50 for the cartridge. If we price it that way, these guys are going to buy one. These guys are going to buy the 2 cartridges and the original printer, and we get $250 worth of revenue. $0 for the printer, $100 for the cartridge gives us $300. We just change the pricing scheme around. We can extract more money from the high value customers. And again, they kind of self-select themselves. We don't know who they are at the beginning of it. We just change our pricing around on the cartridge. The high value users are the people who are going to use their printers a lot. I don't know how successful they were at this, but what did you see with ink cartridges? Do you remember seeing any commercials for ink cartridges? Yeah, you can do your own refills, right? Like you buy the juice, and then they have the cartridge, and you just inject it into there. So HP has to be careful that they don't price it so high, so obnoxiously that somebody's able to enter the market with a cheap substitute that works and be effective at it. Now, what could HP do in response to that? Or, yeah, change the technology, and that's what they do, right? Have you noticed, I was ticked off when I went back to buy another printer, or as they make new printers, they change the type of ink cartridge that goes in there. Do you think they had to change the ink cartridge, the size of how it works in there? No! They did that completely to continue on with their plan. So somebody copies and they say, we have a knockoff brand and that fits the very famous HP 475 printer, but then HP moves into the HP 6000 specialty printer, and of course it has little ink cartridges that the old ones don't work. So not only that, when you go to buy your new printer and you have a stockpile of old ink cartridges because you bought them on sale when they were gone, they don't work on your new printer now, right? And so again, you have to run to the store, buy a new printer. None of that's by accident. It's often by design. All right, you were bringing up software. So give this a read. I think you were on to something with the Adobe, but I didn't want to get into it at that time.
Yeah, I think Adobe doesn't really do it where they like limit the, like what the program can do. It's the same program.
I think you're wrong with at least some of the versions. So there's the Adobe Reader, which is free to
I'm thinking like Illustrator.
Right. You're into the higher level stuff, but I have the X Pro, which has some of the capability. Well, it's above the Reader. It's not the Illustrator. I think you're talking about fancy graphic design.
Yeah.
Is that the one you use? Yeah. So there's the X Pro, and then there's a level above the X Pro. And the main thing here is with Illustrator, you can talk about that one or these reduced versions. What does it cost Adobe to give you the highest level one? If you have the lower level one, what does it really cost them to open up the rest of it? Nothing whatsoever, right? So they're like purposely keeping it at this lower level just for sales again. And God bless them. I'm not holding, they're not evil or anything. They're running the business. That's their business model. And so sometimes you have to do that What they're doing is they're price discriminating. They have to set it up that way because there's high value users, there's low value users, and if they can segment those two users, they can make more product and put more towards R&D, or I could frame that as they can make more money. Okay, so kind of goes, depending on how we frame it, we can put the evil twist on it that they can make more money. Or they could have more funds freed up for research and development to explore new product areas and serve the public, which is actually the version that I actually long-term profit maximization. Okay, so any other comments? What you found with your Illustrator too, as far as the higher level, or was yours a little different?
No, if you get, even if you're a student, you get Illustrator in the same program.
Oh, right, yeah. So you're absolutely right. That is a different type. So
The only one
there.
that differs is Adobe.
So is that direct or indirect price discrimination?
It gets kind of direct because they have to prove it you're a student.
That's right. Yeah. So that's direct price discrimination. So there's kind of multi-levels of price discrimination potentially going on. And so in that case, you're getting the full version, but you're proving that you're a student.
Yeah. And now they went to the cloud, which makes the resale literally impossible.
Right.
To do the resale.
Does Microsoft Office do the same thing? They have a business one and a personal one?
Yeah, they have the whole Office suite. So that includes,
Excel, Outlook,
yes.
PowerPoint.
Yep, and then they have the ones that are a la carte. You can get just the lower version. I don't think they do it so much like, the full version of Word versus a restricted version of Word. They don't so much do that, but they do the whole package, yeah.
That, and they just started a student one. That's one.
They've had just not for a while.
Yeah, most of them do the student stuff so that you can get that and
But it's only good for
educate your
4
students or
years.
professors or whatever. What's that?
It's only good for 4 years.
Oh, see, now that's new.
Yeah.
Unless you re-register under it.
Does it blow up on you after 4
I don't know,
years?
I haven't gotten that far
I know
yet.
they make deals where you can get it as a benefit through that school, but they'll have deals.
Well, you can, when you buy it from, if you buy it from Microsoft, you have to usually the easiest way is if you register your account under like a DEU email address.
Right.
And that's how they
That's
prove
one
it.
way that they prove it.
But so if I did like
Verify it, too.
FL Southern at EDU, I could do that. And then now that I came here, I could do Ottawa at EDU. So if you do a new school, you can.
Then you
buy
buy
it
it.
on our website. Does it go? Get it to us.
No, I can just.
So here's a little bit of that on the numbers. So again, commercial users, and we've kind of talked about different things here, full featured version, commercial users, home users. If this home user is a student, we might be able to do direct price discrimination. But if we can't tell between the two, then we might be able to get more funds out of them with this disabling version. And then here's the difference that potentially could happen just through an illustration on total profit. If we just did the full featured version only in order to pay our bills, we would only get 500 because the home users wouldn't be willing to pay that. They don't have the high enough value placed on the full featured version. If we do all the low price, we leave money on the table because the commercial users would be willing to pay a lot more, but if we price it at 175, we pick up the home users, but we lose the commercial users. And then if we're able to price discriminate, we get both and maximize profits. Okay, questions or comments there? This one's a different twist on this. So here, we actually made it perform worse. We spent money to make it perform worse, right? To actually slow it down. That's just a little bit of the twist compared to having the disabled version or the version of the software that doesn't work quite as good. Here they actually spent money on making it worse so that they could justify a lower price. And all it is to separate the two users. People who want speed and don't care and they're willing to pay for it versus people like, oh, I'm just at home anyway, it doesn't matter, 5 pages per minute or whatever. If I just print off a couple things a day, who the heck cares? But it's business users who are like, if you're a real estate agent, you need to get that stuff printed off, yeah, no problem, I'll pay the extra money for the 10 pages per minute as opposed to the 5. So copiers did this same type of thing when we were running our small business and they'd come in and the same machine, well, this one does 100 pages per minute and this one does 50. Which one do you think? They're only $500 a piece. Well, yeah, that sounds worth it. We're really busy around here. We got to get this paper out. A lot of people using it. All right, any other comments on that one? All right, so volume discounts. Okay, so we got kind of a simple 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I'm just going to add a graph. We don't have to have a graph.
You want to switch your screens?
Not yet. Just kind of adding this. Not even sure how much I'll be using, but just to kind of get the idea of the demand curve. All right, so this just kind of puts into words the demand curve. And we can think about the pricing. So $5. Let's see here. If we go to $5. I'm going to do that. Actually, I'm going to do that up here. So, at a price of $5, we sell 3 units. What was the cost? $150. $150. All right, so the business is thinking to themselves, if I could get these guys to buy more, I could make more money, because the cost to me is only $1.50. And so maybe marginal, we don't quite have all the marginal revenue with marginal cost, but apparently the optimal quantity here in a single price is a quantity of 3. How can we extract this potential gain here? So at $1.50, somebody out there is willing to pay $4. Somebody's willing to pay $3. Somebody's willing to pay $2. Right? So we got this extra chunk of revenue above our cost. If we can do it in such a way that we don't have to drop the price for these other high value customers. All right, so what about volume? How can we structure a volume discount to do that?
Well,
Go ahead.
if a consumer buys 4 units, it'll be at $4. If a consumer buys 5 units, it'll be at $3.
Okay, so let's write that out. Consumer buys
4 units, it'll be at $4.
4 units at $4.
Yeah.
So that's the requirement. Yeah. If you buy 4, we're going to sell them to you at $4. But if you buy less, there's still 5.
Yeah, if you buy 3 units, it's $5.
Okay.
2 units, it's $5.
All right. So how did that help with the revenue? What's my revenue off this person who chooses to do this? What did I gain? Yeah, but I don't want to just sell units. What's my gain off this person who did that? 10. So did I gain $10? How'd you get that, by the way?
$16. You bought 4 units at $4.
Okay.
Your cost is $6.
And the cost is $6.
That didn't matter.
Well, I don't know. That's why I wanted to quiz you on it. So they're $1.50 a piece. What'd you do? Take $1.50 times 4?
Yeah.
Okay, so that equals 6. So they cost me 6. So did I make an extra 10? What did you say about $1?
That, well, if a consumer buys 3 units at $5, that's $15. They buy 4 units, $4.
Okay, so the revenue was different. What was the cost in that situation? So we had $15 worth of revenue, buy 3 at 5, 3 times 5 is 15, and the cost was
$4.
$4.50. And how much did I make? I know, I've been burning you out here.
$11.50.
$11.50, careful, $10.50, right? So, what do you want to make, Brendan?
I'd rather make 16.
You're not gonna make 16.
I'd rather make 10. So if I make 16 and they cost me 6, I make $10.
So I want to make 10.
So you want to sell less. So is this a good scheme to do? No. So let's try again. See how we gotta kind of get through all the moving parts.
Some like buy 2 get 1 free or something.
Yeah, I mean that's what we want to think about. That's why I wanted to push you on this a little bit.
So late.
Let's just modify what Lizzie did here. There's one little simple thing that you could do to make this work. So they're currently buying 5. I'm sorry, they're buying 3 at $5.
4.50 instead of 4.
And then your demand would go down.
Okay, so we could start modifying the price a little bit, but let's just say we have to, if we're dealing with this demand, instead of changing the price for all 4 units, how could we phrase our approach?
Buy 3, get 1 for $2.
Yes, something along those lines, right? So buy 3, your first 3 units are $5, but hey, if you want to buy an extra one, your 4th unit's only going to be 4. Or like you just said, any extra units above, if you sell them at $2.50, you're making $1 on every additional one. Would be another way to phrase it. So anything under that is my point. But that's one way to kind of make a a two-tiered pricing. Your first 5 or your first 3 are at $5. Any thereafter is something different. That would be a way to do a volume discount. Okay? Anything else come to mind?
I've dealt with that before. I was working at a store. Get the people come in, try to sell you bulk, buy it bulk, buy it. I would bring you some amount of stuff for a good deal.
Yeah. So the lesson here is that dropping your price and getting volume is not actually the answer in every case. It might work in some cases, but it didn't work here, right? We just showed it that dropping the price and getting people to buy more made you earn less money because your profit was less at the end of the day. So what we have to think a little bit differently when we price discriminate so that we're picking up sales that we wouldn't have got otherwise, right? And so sometimes we might be able to have high value and low value customers that we can pick up these extra sales the way we worded it. Some people don't want to buy that many, they don't want the volume, and so they'll just stop here, and other people it'll entice them into doing it. But we have to kind of check our map to see which one might work in this case. All right, so another method that we could do is kind of similar to that through a fixed price. So what does I don't know, Great Life is? Does anybody remember a Great Life here in town? What do golf country club members typically? How is that structured? How is it structured for a golf membership?
That you pay for membership and you can play for free walking.
Okay.
Purchase a card.
And that's the way the Great Life works, right? So you have to purchase the card. Other places you might have, you have your membership annual fee that you have to pay, but then you still have to pay each time you use it, right? Those sorts of schemes are a two-tiered scheme that's kind of similar to this, is that if I, let's just say I price all of my units at $1.50, which sounds bad, right? But at least I'm covering my marginal cost. But instead, charge them an upfront cost. What's the most I can charge them? Now here I'm dealing with identical consumers. So let's just talk about this being one consumer. This consumer is this demand curve. If I charge $1.50, how many units are they going to buy? 6. Now, how much value do those 6 units give that person? Or how would we calculate it if you don't want to do all the math in your head? Remember, this is different. What is the value that that consumer gets on the 6 units? What's the value that they get on the first unit? What is it worth to them? How many dollars? The very first unit, $7. Now the second unit's not worth as much because they've already consumed the first, even though it's identical. That's the law of demand, right? So the price that we're willing to pay goes down as we acquire more and more of the good. And so the first unit's worth $7, the second unit's worth 6, 7 plus 6 is 13. The third unit's worth 5, 7 plus 6 is 13, plus 5 is 18, plus 18 plus 4 is 22, 22 plus 3 is 25, 25 plus 2 is 27. So at 6 units, this area is the consumer surplus. If the good was priced at $1.50. So there's $27 worth of consumer surplus that the value that the consumer gets. So another way of phrasing this is that if I charged a $25 one-time fee for the month, and then $1.50 for uses, that would be a good deal for the consumer. They would still buy it because they get $27 worth of value. I, as a company, charge $25 for the monthly fee, and then $1.50 every time they come. They're going to end up using it 6 times. times during the month. They're a happy customer. I just extracted all of their consumer surplus, or nearly all of it, by designing it that way. Right? So I'm able to have this kind of two-part pricing scheme. And so some establishments have this membership fee, and this is the type of concept that they're usually taking advantage of. With Great Life, I was a little concerned whether they were going to be long-term sustainable because they don't charge anything for using that golf course, which surprised me. I thought the thing would be run down, and I think there's other things going on with why it is working so far. But I was concerned about the volume, how much use the turf, the condition of the turf that it would, how well it would maintain, and whether they'd have expenses to cover it.
So many values in other places.
The other places, the other things, and people don't maybe use it as much as they think they're going to use it. All kinds of things going on. And then the golf cart thing is the other revenue source, right? Is that people come and they're like, oh, well, cart's only $9. Well, normally I pay $18 for a round anyway with the cart, so this is a bargain. We've changed the sunk cost, fixed cost, the cost of the margin when you actually go to the course that day. To use it with a cart is $9. And so then how much did that cart actually cost them? Again, close to nothing. All right. I got one little tiny baby one for you. And then we'll call on it. The only reason I want to do this is because it's near and dear to my heart. That's what we just talked about. So, Russ comes to town. AT&T says, here's the deal, I remember the little card I got in the mail, $30 for internet, or $30 for cable, or $30 for phone. You pick $30 apiece. But wait, there's more. You could bundle all three for $55. Now here's what was really going on. I'm revealing to you what my willingness to pay was, but they didn't know this. So the only thing I really wanted was internet. Now, of course, I'll take cable if it's cheap, if it was $15. They don't know this, but I do, right? So I'm willing to pay $15. I'm willing to pay $5 for maybe a local phone. So for the bundle, I'm willing to pay 15 plus 5 is 20 plus 40 is 60. They throw this bundle at me. Do I buy it? Yeah. And they just extracted money from me that I wasn't planning on doing. What's the cost to them of running these extra services over that little wires that come into my house? Nothing. Again, the marginal cost, once they've got me hooked on any one of these three items, once they've got me hooked on it, they just have to flip a switch or program something, and all of a sudden juices are flowing into my house, and now I get all the services, right? So all this is a price discrimination scheme again, and it worked because had they priced it at 30, 30, 30, the only thing I would have bought would have been the internet. And I would have had consumer surplus of $10 because I was willing to pay 40, but I only had to pay 30. I would have said, screw the phone, screw the cable, but instead, by them doing this pricing, this bundling scheme, I bought them all. Okay? So that's the advantage of bundling, packaging together that needs to be looked at.
So do they do research on like what typical preferences are?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Yep. They will look at that, and then also they look at their cost structure. They're able to bundle these services, so they're taking advantage of economies of scope, right? So they have the equipment. They're able to figure out how to deliver cable, how to deliver. That all evolved over time. But then, since the cost is next to nothing, by packaging it this way, if they're still able to get some people who would be single users. Notice that if I was only willing to pay $5 for cable, then 5 plus 5 is 10, plus 40 is 50, the package is 55. I say, sorry, I'm not buying it. Right? I'd be out of the market for the bundle. And so sometimes it might work, for some users it might work, but they're able to pick up some users who have a high enough willingness to pay. Again, old granny down the street is willing to pay $20 for a local phone because because that's just the way they've always done it. They want their local phone service. So they have a higher willingness to pay. She's not willing to pay much for internet, but she might goof around with email once in a while if she had it. So she's got a 20 here and a 20 here. And then she likes her cable shows, so she's got a 20 here. So even though Granny is a different person than I am with different preferences as far as serving preferences, we still hook Granny on the package too. So some people, we end up getting more money out of this bundling, filtering to heterogeneous preferences of consumers. Everybody's a little bit different. By running these schemes, we get more people, get more money. That's why it's important topic. All right.
I got a question about this real quick.
Yes.
So if you would have just got internet at $30, you'd have a consumer surplus of $10.
Yes.
But doing the bundle, you have a consumer surplus of $5.
Yes.
So
Good point. So, am I out to maximize consumer surplus?
So maximize consumer value.
The consumer value, yeah. So I'm just willing to buy something as long as I'm getting to pay something that I think is worth, then I'm happy. I'm a happy consumer, right? Because the rest of it is just kind of games. We don't know for sure what our consumer surplus would have been on one or the other. As long as I'm willing to pay $5 and I get it for $5, I'm happy. Yep. So that's a good point, though. Yes, it is less consumer surplus, but I'm getting the value of all the products is what generates my utility. Okay. All right. We'll see you next week.
We can just avoid equations. This class can be pretty cool.
What am I doing?
We gotta get.
If you could send out the questions like as soon as possible, so we already turn in.
Okay, do it. Feel free to send me an email. Make sure you're a little responsible.
For this callback thing, do you just want me to send it to you in email or?
No, bring it next week to class. Oh, you'll be gone? Then,
I mean, I can.
if you have it here, you can slide it under my door. When are you leaving? Okay. Well, I guess it's up to you. If you can slide it under the door, or you can send it snail mail. If you can scan it or something, that's fine. But yeah.
But I could probably write it out and take a picture of it. And send it to you.
Yeah, that probably works.
Okay.
I do like to get the original back though.
No, that's fine. Yeah, I can do that, but just.
And if you, I'd recommend that you kind of don't procrastinate that. And just
Well,
get
no,
it.
yeah.
So maybe just try to get it done, by Friday or whatever, and just slide it under my door.
Okay.
If you can.
If I just had your class, yeah, it'd be all right. Yeah.
Huh?